Hello, Blaine Gray here from Plastering for Beginners, and today I'm going to show you how to plaster a vaulted ceiling. And I know a lot of people can have the curved ceiling at the top, but this particular customer wanted the angles cut. You know, they wanted the crisp angles running all the way through, so there's a clear divide between each ceiling on each side. And one of the biggest things is having a straight line all the way through. So as you can see, I'm running a string line from one end of the ceiling to the other. I've already plastered the top, and that way you've got a clear line, clear chalk line running all the way across, which will be straight from one end to the other. Because one of the hardest things is making sure that line's running true from one end of the room to the other, and there's no way you'd ever guess that. So if you run a chalk line from that top end corner to the other side of the room, then you know you've got something straight that you can follow, something that's going to be right when you plaster to it. So now the hardest thing is making sure you stick to that line. So this is my first coat, and what I usually do is start placing the plaster just before the line. So then when it comes to applying the second coat, you can see where the blue chalk line is, you can see where the line is running through, and not only that, if a little plaster does run over the line, then at least you can still see the blue line in place, because you want to be able to see the blue line all the way throughout. That's the aim of this really. So I've done that, applied the second coat, and as you can see I've done both sides, and applied the first coat, sorry, this is the second coat, sorry, excuse me, yeah. And again, starting from the bottom, I've already had that bottom edge plastered there, so I'm just running from where the joint meets, and try and keep the bottom edges nice and crisp. You don't really want to be fighting with that either, and if you do struggle, maybe do the angle below this particular ceiling and do that after, so then at least you're not hitting two hard corners you've got to worry about. At least that way you've just got the top edge to worry about at the time. So now this is where, with the second coat, I'm going to start touching the line now. I want to plaster to that blue line. I want to try and get it running straight all the way through, so you've got to take your time, apply the plaster on the right spot, and just work through, taking your time. Like I said, I do work price, I am a price worker, but it's these particular moments and it's these parts of plastering where you will be judged, because I've seen so many plasterers come in, smash them out, and the line's all over the place, it's waving everywhere. You want this to work, you want this to be straight, and you want this to look good, because this as a plasterer is where, you know, your reputation comes in. It's easy to come in and do box rooms, but this is where you want it to look crisp, you want it to look right. So take your time and aim for that blue line. Like I said, use it as a guide. I always say blue line, mine's a blue chalk line, but whatever colour you've got line running through, just aim for it. Try and stick to that mark and try and keep within the borders of where you've got. So this is it, second coat's done. I'm just flattening the corners now. I'm going to try and make sure everything's crisp. As you can see, I'm starting from the bottom there, pushing the plaster in to where the joint meets, push it in hard, and try and create a nice straight line at the bottom there as much as the top. This is as important as the top half. And scrape back any excess plaster you've got there. Scrape it back, make sure it's not going to be in your way. Just get it clean, ready for when you're troweling it through. So I just had a sip and brew that. And I was using the tip of my trowel there, the very top tip, and I run it along my edge to make sure I've got a clean edge when it comes to plastering. Take your time doing this as well. If you do this right at this stage of plastering, you won't have to do it again. Make sure you've scraped all the excess plaster, and give yourself a good run for the future stages. If you get this done out of the way now, then you want to win it really. This is again when you really want to start crunching that line. After applying your coats of plaster, there might be some sections that's over the line, it might be under it, and we really want to get that right at this stage. We don't really want to leave it later than this, because at least we're collecting fat with the plaster that's wet. We can use the fat to fill in the lines where we're behind, but on the flip side, if it's over the line, at least we can scrape it back and try and come back to that point where, you know, it's running through straight. We are human. It's pretty much impossible to plaster a completely straight line, but you can try your bloody hardest, and As you can see, there's a few spots here where I'm over the line, so I'm scraping it back, trying to get back to where it is. If you can't see the line, then you should be able to see from the other sections where it is. Just do this early. You don't want to be doing it in the later stages. If you do it now, it's going to be a lot easier to get right. So I'm scraping it back, and then what I'll do, I'll push it in, using that as a guide, and really stick to it. As you can see, I'm smoothing it out as we're going as well. I'm still using Marshalltown trowel. Obviously, it's only 14 inch. Maybe the better if you've got a good control over a 16 inch, it might be better because you've got less of a span to control. If you've got 16 inches, you've got a bigger width to obviously work with. So that's it. Just take your time at this stage. If you get it right now, like I said, you don't have to focus on it too much at future stages. Scrape back any excess you've got beyond the line and fill in anything that's below it. And it's this stage where you'll get the rewards for it later down the line, and you'll start seeing good results. And just fill in any areas that need filling with your plaster as you're going on the scaling as well. As we mentioned, make sure the top's always done when you're doing these vaulted ceilings, because it's a lot easier to run a chalk line through and see where it's working from there. Do it that way. And just really push with your trowel to push into the edges of where your plaster is looking a bit slack, and just work to get them lines right. Because as you said, this is where you will be judged as a plasterer. Square rooms are easy. This is where you come in and you start to get really good results. This is my stage doing a wet trowel. So I've got the Superflex. Again, just nice generous amount of water on the edge there. And just keep pushing that edge, that bottom edge, and make sure you've got it nice and tight, because obviously it's as important as the top. And this is where we're really working at the top edge now as well, using the water, filling it between it. Use your brush and just brush along that edge at the top, which will also help to smooth any plaster that's slightly over or under, and it helps give it a uniform line when it starts running through. And if you are over, just use your trowel again to cut back, and this is where you really want to start perfecting it now. Even if you've got a bit of fat from the trowel before, just use the head of your trowel, and just gently scrape it back, and then trowel in so you've got that perfect cut line, and just stick to it. As you can see, I'm using water brush to brush along the edges there. Again, that always helps to give a nice defined angle when you use your water brush. It just seems to give it a uniform finish between the two joints, and just really work at getting that angle right. It looks like it's time consuming, that's because it actually is, but the more you do it, the better you become at doing it, and it becomes an easier process. But at first, just take your time. Maybe just don't do too much of a hit. If you're new to doing vaulted ceilings, just take your time with it. They are quite tricky. You've got to have a lot of control over your tools, and you've got to have a lot of control over the trowel you're using. And I'd recommend using a trowel that you're used to using, and that you've got a lot of control over it. You don't want to be using a new trowel for this. Use one you're comfortable with, and use one that is one of your trusty trowels that you use a lot of the time. And as you can see, I'm just polishing it up with my Superflex now. It's looking alright. Just using the Superflex with the water. It's my wet trowel, flattening the walls down, polishing it up, and just working on them edges, make sure they're crisp. And just use your trowel to let the trowel do the work, and the water, keep a little bit, minimal amounts of water, just keep it lubricated so the plaster's not pulling, and make sure you do your best to get them lines pucker. And this is now the final trowel. Anything now is probably a bit too late. I'm just using my Plastering. And the beauty of this trowel is the fact you can really push in at them angles now, because it doesn't seem to pull any plaster off. It is quite very forgiving on the plaster. You can give it a lot of beating, and just because the trowel's that good, the plastic just seems to really work well with angles. I find using a Plasiflex on my corners, on my inner edges, even when I'm doing, say I've got 3 walls next to each other, I'm using a lot of wet on wet angles. The Plasiflex is brilliant for really getting that clean, crisp finish when you're working with it. I think it's brilliant just for, you know, just brilliant trowel in general, never mind in terms of angles and getting it right. So I'm just using the tip of my trowel just to get rid of any last bits of fat that might be over the line, or just a bit that might be affecting that run through. And now this is my secret weapon. I've just got my little 1-inch brush, a little bit of water, and run it along all the edges. That's my secret weapon. Just a little bit of water. Do it when it's virtually dry, the plaster. You don't want it reacting with plaster. You're literally just giving it a little spruce with your brush, rubbing it along. This makes a whole world of difference to your edges, and this gives it that final polish up. Make sure the angles look sweet when it comes to the painter doing his work. And at least if you do this right, your lines will run through. You'll have a nice, clean, crisp, vaulted ceilings. Your scaling will look right. And this is the important part of being a plasterer. Make sure you get these bits right. This is important. It's easy to do, like I said, big walls, but this is where your trade comes in. And you can have a look at them now, both sides. Runs right along the bottom. I know it's a curved camera, so you can't really tell, but that's how it looked at the end. Nice straight lines. Not the best picture, sorry about the quality, but that's where it was. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope it was helpful. I hope you found it useful, and please like and subscribe, and if you did enjoy videos, feel free to leave a comment. Thanks a lot, cheers, see you next time, bye.